Red Bull King of the Air was one of the original main contests. It helped kick off the sport as a whole.
It's one of the only events in the world that focuses on the big air thing.
It is called the King of the Air, air being the key word.
It was 98 when I had the very first event. Cost me $400 out of my pocket, got a keg of beer. Mike helped me.
Like, okay, you spread the word and I'll figure out how to get a couple buoys and judges down there and we'll do it.
Mike was in the event, Corey was in the event, Don was in the event, Robbie was in the event, Lou Wyman, Elliot, Maurizio Toscano, Chris Gilbert, go down the list. And we held the very first event with 25 kiters here on Maui.
Joe Cool said, why don't we do the competition and we'll call it the Kite Surfing World Championship as a joke. Because the year before, there was just like 6 people.
We called it the Kite Ski World Championships.
One of the people was Corey's wife.
We held it here at Kanaha. I had to negotiate with the canoe heli top guy because everyone sort of hated windsurfers, but people liked the thought of kites.
There was no prize money. It was really about going out and just having fun, and then the parties afterward.
There were more girls at this party than had ever been at any windsurfing party. And everyone said, kite surfing is here to stay.
Once word went out and the sport started to blow, that's when Red Bull approached us with doing an event. And then that's when we came up with the name King of the Air, and it stuck because at that time it was all about getting big air and the wow factor.
We knew it was going to be something amazing, but we didn't know when or how.
Right about when I got into kite surfing, there was this era of experimentation and development that was just going ballistic.
At that time, it could barely even call it a fringe sport.
It was a new sport, so anything was possible.
Actually went just up here in the cow pasture, learned to fly the thing, and got drugged through a bunch of cow manure, crashed the thing a bunch of times.
Everybody got thrashed.
We went out to this field and it was like just coated in cow manure. Well, nobody knew to put it over in the corner.
Launched it straight downwind like a kite.
Straight up like hot launch, and it drug him from 0 to 60 in about 2 seconds.
It was crazy times, man. I mean, people were getting hurt, and we were doing a lot of experimentation ourselves. We were at home rigging things up and throwing it up in the air and trying to see what would happen. We were getting drug into things, and
Here we are launching from railroad tracks and off of small cliffs. If you could find a soccer field or an open grassy area, that's great. My dad would usually walk the control bar down to me, pass it off. I'd be getting my skis on near the water and then let the kites just yank me off the rock and into the water.
We were probably launching him in the worst possible way, which was you put the kite dead downwind to you, the guy just holds on, digs his heels in the sand, the thing rips up out of the sky and just sends you down the beach like 50 yards.
I had to take a surfboard and put foot straps on. I had to make my own bar out of old windsurfing boom.
You can't use stainless steel piano wire, but you should hear him sing. That piano wire's coming through the air.
We tied Manu to the car and then sent the kite up. The kite dove over to the right and just slammed him into the front of the car. And I remember we all looked at each other and said, that's not gonna work. We'll have to test it another way.
We had like knives strapped to our shins in case the lines got wrapped around us. But there's no way to wind the lines up, so we'd like cut old coat hangers and make hooks.
We didn't have a harness, I didn't have straps, just a kite and a skimboard.
You had one kite, and that was it, so you had to make that thing work no matter what.
The future belongs to those that are brave enough to be first.
like you didn't know what was going to happen if you did this.
It made me, in a way, proud to be a kiter because at least you fought through that and you're willing to try something new, you know. Nobody really knew what they were doing, so every single person was an innovator.
You got to watch your best friends just get hucked around the beach because nobody knew anything.
None of us knew how to fly a kite. There was no training kites, none of this crap. We didn't know what worked. All we knew is that we were getting worked a lot.
When we were learning, there is no industry, there is no magazines, no videos, no one ever got paid to kite.
There was no tour, there was no school that you could go to learn how to do it. There's no one you could ask for help. I mean, it was all unwritten.
But for me, and for a lot of guys that were with me at the time, it was part of the attraction. It was this not knowing what was just around the corner.
And we would be teabagged. Like you see a guy going by and he's got no board, and he's just being lifted out of the water like this all the way down.
If it was a red kite, it was either Elliot or Sierra Emery. If it was a white kite, it was either me or Manu. Also a red kite would have been Robbie. You know, like Rush Randall, he had the green kite. And so you could tell from miles away who that person was. You're a part of the family. You brought in your style, you brought in your personality or your girlfriend or whatever. You brought something into the sport that we all appreciate.
We didn't see a picture of anybody actually kiting on the water. We just kind of did it.
You have to get over some things within yourself to have that boldness, but you get very richly rewarded for it.
Corey came over.
Corey Rosler.
Corey Rosler.
Raisler.
Rosler.
It's Corey Raisler.
Corey was like, I think, the founder of the sport.
Well, I was kind of a reluctant at first and then a willing guinea pig for my dad. He was an armchair sailor that could calculate theoretically that you could sail 4 times the wind speed if you towed a hydrofoil with a kite. So I said, yeah, okay, so what does all that mean, Dad?
Going a little bit faster than anybody's gone before. That's our bag.
And then the blowout races, it was clear from the beginning that kites were gonna be dominant. Sometimes, like the first blowout race, it's wall-to-wall windsurfers, and then they'd start the race and I'd sail through with my kite. Most of these racers, they don't know what's coming. The finishing clipboard would have all the names of the windsurfers crossing the line. They'd write my name down and then they crossed it out. But I still got a time on the clipboard.
Corey came to visit me and show me his kite ski and water ski system.
Don Montague, he wouldn't hide it. That guy was excited from the get-go. And he was right away trying to convince his boss, Robbie, that we gotta get into kites. It wasn't until 3 years later that he finally convinced his boss, we gotta get into kites. You know?
What'd you guys think of Corey and the kites? Oh, I think that's hot. Yeah.
The first time I ever saw him ride was actually in Sylt, Germany. We were at the Windsurfing World Cup, and he was out kiting in the waves one day on his skis when we were hiding from the rain because it wasn't really windy enough for us to compete. And he was out there boosting, and it's like, wow, how's the guy on the water skis?
And I saw, oh, there's having the windsurf freestyle over at the hatchery. So I came by and did some big jumps for fun. I'd blown off the competition. And those were the jumps that people photographed. They remember that year you came through the hatchery and boosted that 30-foot jump, and it was probably only 20. The first time in Maui was, I want to say 1993. We did a TV special. It was the morning weather. They were showing footage from the day before where I was surfing waves at Hukipa with 2 skis and a kite ski kite.
And he steps off the beach with water skis on. And he just jumps on, and we're like, oh my God, look at that guy. He's going faster than all the sailboards and more upwind, just screaming.
It looked fantastic. I couldn't wait. I chased him out in the water. Of course, I couldn't catch him. He would be jumping the waves towards shore, getting big air. The kite would be over the power lines.
He was able to go upwind. He was power and style.
He looked like a duck. I couldn't really figure out what was going on, but boy, it sure had me.
We're sitting there watching him going, that's pretty cool. We need to get one of those. So Laird got on the phone and hunted him down. We found him in Oregon. We're like, we need one of your kites.
I was trying to make a living manufacturing kites in the gorge, packaging them up with skis and bars, and one at a time by me and Randy and Therese, my wife. When she'd get off work, she'd come in and tie knots.
So he would literally launch the kite from the water to the end of the lines, the length that he wanted, and then he would water ski out of the water and then take off.
we were actually sailing fast. Stacks of flexifoils would yank us right off the beach, and if you had skis still on your feet, you were zooming. And that was when the buzz really hit.
So they went and had a little contest at Spreckelsville. Everybody showed up. Him and his guys stepped off the beach and just went upwind. And we'd do a run down through and just do what you could and then, like, you know, be done. Corey had this board. It looked like a wide water ski, and he kind of standed, like, obscured on it.
When you get on one board, like a wakeboard or a monoski, you can have one long edge that's much more efficient.
Well, he could dig his heels in and just go upwind, stay in the same place. So kind of all scratching our head going, wow. By the end of that day, everybody could go upwind. It was just monkey see, monkey do. We realized how weak we were in the legs. It's like, oh, you can go upwind. So that was a very defining moment. That day, it became a sport where you could get out of your car, go out, and come back to your car.
That whole time we were struggling with kite ski, we knew there was something missing. I didn't know until I landed on Maui in '96. What was missing was the camaraderie and the community aspect to it. We knew all along you were going to be able to go upwind. We just didn't know how you're going to be able to, like, support your family doing it.
Corey was like the light. He was one of those guys that was paving the trail for what the sport became in the future.
Getting into kiting was one of the best things that I've done in my whole life. I go across the country and I go to a random beach and there's kiters there. And you just meet them and it's friendly, and once in a while they figure out who you are and they're sincerely grateful. That's the kind of recognition that matters.
The pictures and the video that came from Hawaii really drew everybody into wanting to do it.
Kiting was really visually contagious.
You look at a surfer compared to a windsurfer compared to a kiteboarder, your eyes are automatically going to go to the kiteboard.
There's a giant infrastructure of filmers and photographers
that has amazing potential commercially, for TV, for media.
When you're out in the water shooting, you're like attracting flies, and guys want to just get their picture taken.
One day I just saw this video of Lou and Elliot and Rush Randall jumping huge and flying for awesome distances. It just kind of inspired me to figure the sport out.
Yeah, I had the first kiteboarding pictures in Wakeboarding magazine. The editor was like, hey, get some shots of these guys.
And then I saw a magazine article of a French guy, Manu Berton, kiting here at Lanes in Ho'okipa. And so when I came here, I was really thrilled to meet just one other kiteboarder.
It's that awe of here's someone jumping higher than a telephone pole and landing soft as a feather.
There was a pretty open spirit of sharing at the time, so the internet became real popular as a way to share a lot of the info.
You know, a guy goes and gets a 14-second jump. Everyone in the world knows about it next week. They'll be going online and seeing what some guy in Germany has to say about it. Guys know about it in Poland, in Russia, in Japan, everywhere. People started using kiting for commercials.
You know, ESPN magazine, Outside magazine. They would get wind of it and they would call me up and go, oh, we hear you have shots.
And we started having more and more competitions and the prize money was going up and we had a tour. And all of a sudden, we were kind of like, whoa, this is really going to become a sport. And so it was that kind of energy, almost right from the get-go, that just imbibed kiting.
The equipment wasn't up to standard.
There were some kites we would take them out and they would break right away. We couldn't even fly them, and some just worked better than others.
It seemed like every 3 months the equipment was changing.
There was so much room for improvement, but that's when it started just getting better and better and better.
This was the final revolution of a real kite bar. It's super light. Rush used this with his foil boards and ram air. If you crash the kite, you can reel the kite into you, get the water out of the ram air and relaunch it again and go.
I bought one of the first Corey Rossler Delta kites. It truly was an art to throw the kite up, grab the bar, and harness it before it all went bad. The lines were constantly breaking. They didn't have the Spectre lines they have today.
When you dropped your kite down on the water, there was probably a 1 or 2% chance you were going to get it back out.
I know, but but it was so wet that you had to sit there and dry it before it could actually fly back up into the air.
We all made our own control bars. We used old windsurfing equipment.
Brett came up with a reel boom to replace the big giant reel booms. He made one where we welded it all together and it just spooled right into the center into a little thing like this.
And everybody at this table owned one.
And then once the kite started to evolve, you know, when we said, okay, there's got to be a better way. Let's change aspect ratio. Let's go to 4 lines.
Had a 5-meter Whippica. That's the only thing that was there. And the 8-meter showed up, and that was like getting behind a tank.
If you looked at some of these videos of the first kiteboarding events, we're all on our Peahi boards.
It's cool when you make a new board and you go out and you're able to go 10 more miles an hour.
First real improvement was in the boards. You know, making boards that you could hold a rail and really stay upwind with against all that power of a 2-line kite.
My friend Elliot actually made the first chicken meat bar. We called it a chicken meat bar because it was kind of like, okay, you're a chicken, you know, you can't deal with the power, man, you know. It actually became the worldwide term for that bar.
The kite products have gotten just so amazing this year. You tow into the wave with all this power, and then you just shut the power off, and then it's all surfing. It's 100% surfing until you want the power back, and then you just sheet in, and then you got the power back. And so it's really gotten cool. And I think that's going to attract a lot more just the core surf.
We would call each other and meet at Ukipa to go kite together.
You certainly become friends with the second guy who shows up at the beach, because that's probably the guy who's going to launch your kite.
That's how it was, you know? It's like, okay, who's going to drive?
It's always nice to have someone grab your kite for you or grab your board if you crash.
The guy that you're cursing is the guy who's gonna save your ass when your kite goes down.
I've picked up more hitchhikers in the gorge, wrapping up their kites and walking down Highway 14. Oh yeah, I kind of got messed up and separated from my stuff.
And you'll run all the way down the beach to get that kite for that guy, because we've all seen what can happen.
I wave at everybody out there because I'm just having the time of my life.
I tell you what, you know what it is? You jump 30, 40 feet in the air and you're feeling good, you know? And you want to tell a guy, did you see that?
All you got to do is look at all the smiles on these people's faces, and you can see the stoke is there.
2 years ago, if you told me I could be here competing in the final of the King of the Air with Flash Austin, I would have just said, yeah, I don't believe you, that's not possible. So it's just a dream.
The first time I saw kite surfing was '86 in France. And I was at a windsurfing World Cup. It was a day that there was almost no wind at all. In fact, for windsurfers, it was no wind. It was just crazy. There was a helicopter trying to like create wind for these guys to windsurf. You know, they were on their biggest boards, their biggest sails, and they were not even moving. And some guy shows up on the beach with a kite and water skis and throws a kite up in the air, jumps in his water skis and goes flying past all these guys. And he rounds this point, this rock point, and disappears downwind. And I was just scratching my head going, that was crazy. And I'd never seen him again for years. I found out later it was Bruno Legeno, who was what most people consider the inventor of the modern kite surfer.
We felt that it was the beginning of the real sport.
We had heard that a Frenchman was working on a kite that had air in the leading edge, that if you dropped it in the water, it would actually float.
And he was developing these kites in a very simplistic way.
And he had no concept of how to actually make a sail or make a kite, so he actually made a reverse mold of what he thought the kite should look like.
Basically scaling the kites off of these molds.
And had to lay the pieces of the cloth on it to figure out how to cut the patterns so that it would not be wrinkled.
Because those were the tools he had, and they did an incredible job.
But I think he was just this totally rogue, recluse guy with this weird concept that no one even looked at him.
Then we tried to develop other markets for this kite, for example, safety or flying.
It took him about 12 years before he actually brought it to market and got the design to where everybody else could use it.
It was called Whippicat at this time, and it was
an inflatable, small inflatable kite, and it was a little knee board that you put on and you inflate it, and you just kind of put it along the water. Bruno's design was the next biggest step. Being the shape that it is, it could roll over on its side and launch from the water. Now it started to make sense to everybody as opposed to sea anchor style kite, which is what the Ram Air kite is.
You could actually really crash your kite and get going again, where with a foil kite, you know, you could dip it here and there, but if you really crashed it, you were swimming home with spaghetti.
One of my team riders, Manu Bertin, came. He met Bruno in France, brought it to my loft, and I was just like, wow, this is it. This is a work of art, you know? So we took our expertise and developed software with Bruno to develop his style of kite, inflatable with all the controls. And I started playing around with cleats and systems on the bar to allow you to depower.
Inflatable kite made it viable.
That is when it made it a lot more acceptable.
It was really another defining moment of the sport.
Set the standard for the future.
At that stage, the sport became real.
I really want to bring this the sport to everybody.
Robbie Nash, he's Robbie Nash. You know, what can you say?
You know, I used to be the youngest guy, and there was, oh, look, there's that little kid, Robbie Nash. And now it's like, look at that, there's that old guy, Robbie Nash. Some people say they don't know anyone that works harder than I do, no matter what they do. I look at it that I've never had a real job my whole life. Since I was a little kid, I've been doing this. I mean, it's evolved, it's changed, I've included other sports, but the core of my existence is riding waves, basically, and blasting around in the wind. Passion for something is a good thing. It's never been work, it's never been like, oh shoot, I gotta go do whatever today.
For me, having windsurfed since I was 10 years old, when I used to get up and watch Robbie windsurf at 3 in the morning because it was on Sports South somewhere, and to be able to ride at Ho'okipa against him, he set the tone for me.
He's missed so many airplanes to sign some little kid's autograph.
He's on an airplane every other day. I see him not so often anymore.
I drag my feet getting into things usually. Once I got into it, I got really into it.
The first day he's on the kite, and the first 5 minutes he's going out in the shore break in Kailua and he does a barrel roll. He didn't even know how to kite.
If you get the opportunity to watch him in the contest, he will shock you how powerful and how high he will jump compared to everybody else's style.
He's just really fun to watch because he kites the way he windsurfs. He just keeps his speed up. It doesn't matter if he's coming in or going out.
He's got the temperament. He's the man. He's choking me up. I can't talk anymore.
Trying not to grow up. Trying not to be too responsible, trying not to plan too far into the future. All the things that people say are the wrong things to do in life if you want to be successful have been my key to success. I just love what I do, try to do it well. So far, so good.
Let's just say that the sport is in a cycle.
It's trying to find its footing. You know, it's trying to find its place in the surfing industry, who saw it in the beginning as a sport that people were flailing around through the air and spinning around out of control.
Flash Austin, Robbie Nash for the big air, high jumps, and then already at that point you had the wake style just kind of being pushed by Lou Wayman, Elliot LeBeau, Mauricio. On the same island, they were going in two completely different directions.
For me, the sport is about flying and carving and surfing, and to other guys, it's handle passes and tech tricks.
It started out with big air, spinny jumps.
Foot out, you know, take your board off, spin it around.
Jump and take off your end from the bar.
Pokes, the big flicky airs.
Right now, the cycle that it's in is very technical, extremely difficult handle-pass combinations.
You know, they're really hard to do, but it's something that the public can't really relate to. They look at that and go, wow, that looks kind of... And then all of a sudden they see one guy just do a regular jump and he's 40 feet in the air and they go, wow, look at that.
Just a normal high jump gets more applause from the beach than the hardest, lowest, coolest handle pass technical maneuver.
And what we try to equate it to is freestyle motocross. Motocross is very difficult racing. It's very technical and very difficult. You don't get 30,000 people filling a stadium. But when those guys started doing the super jump thing, it fills stadiums.
Competitions, it's made it hard to judge, because how do you judge somebody that's really going fast down the line, throwing lots of spray, as opposed to somebody that's just being very fluid, kind of down the face with a surfboard?
Kite surfing is about as close as it gets to surfing.